Are there any further amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized. Clerk will report the resolution.
Amendment number 4 to House Resolution 918, offered by Mr. Neguse. Page 2, line 7, strike investigative and insert the following: open and transparent investigative. Page 6, line 1, strike investigative and insert the following: open and transparent investigative. Page 9, line 19, strike investigative and insert the following: open and transparent investigative.
The gentleman is recognized on his amendment.
I thank the chairman. I hesitate to belabor the arguments I've made already regarding what I consider to be and what I think the American people would find to be a baseless impeachment process that Republicans have initiated. It's a political stunt. The American people know that to be the case. They know that because there's been no cogent articulation by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle as to what crime they're actually investigating, no connection to the constitutional standard for impeachment. But one of the other reasons they know this to be true is because of the sham process that Republicans have initiated. And this amendment seeks to at least rectify that glaring defect. And while this amendment, of course, has an audience of the entire committee, it perhaps has an even more targeted audience of one or two of my friends on the other side of the aisle who have spoken in the past about transparency, and I'm hoping maybe Mr. Massie or Mr. Roy might engage me in a colloquy about the merits of this particular amendment. It's very simple. Thus far, Republicans have engaged in a process that's been largely behind closed doors. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez recounted this in great detail. The fact that so many of the interview transcripts have been hidden from the public, the fact that witnesses who have sought to testify in public, including the president's son, have been impeded by the committee from doing so. We went back and looked. The resolution that initiated the impeachment inquiry into former President Donald Trump is very similar in terms of the language. That essentially, Republicans have attempted to try to emulate different provisions of it. But there was one glaring omission, which is that in that resolution in 2019, prefaced behind every component paragraph that describes the investigation that the committees of jurisdiction would be engaged in was a commitment to, quote, open and transparent investigative proceedings. 3 words: open and transparent. Those 3 words were deleted by Republicans in this resolution. And so this amendment is very simple. It's very straightforward. It's not a gotcha amendment. There's no hidden door. It's simply asking my colleagues to add that phrase, open and transparent, to the resolution as a prefatory clause before the description of each investigative committee of jurisdiction. Because thus far, the process has been anything but. And so it makes sense to me why Republicans didn't include the phrase open and transparent, because the process has not been open and transparent. So I don't think this was an accident. It wasn't an error by omission. It was intentional. There's a great way for the Republicans, my colleagues, my friends on the other side of the aisle, to perhaps prove the contrary, which is to support this amendment. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to yield to the gentleman from Kentucky.
Words are words, but the problem is I served on the Oversight Committee when the Democrats did their inquiry, and that happened 3 floors underground in a skiff where nobody could bring their cell phones. I sat down there for hours, and what happened is there was no semblance of openness, or you would be arrested and taken to jail if you tried to witness what was happening inside of that skiff. For weeks, I sat down there with Ambassador Sondland. I sat down there with Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. There was no openness, no transparency, unless you count Adam Schiff running out every time he got a nugget of something that he could leak. And that is exactly how I witnessed that process. Was the gentleman on the Oversight Committee or the Intel Committee at the time?
No, I was on Judiciary.
So If
But I guess
you've
the
been
question
on
to
either
you-
of those committees,
You know, and I understand the argument you're making. I would say a couple things. First, the resolution, again, you all used it as essentially took different provisions and modified them and so forth. The inquiry resolution was following those interviews, as I can best recollect, from back in October and September of 2019. The inquiry resolution that you all have essentially used as a template was after that. And essentially what the resolution then compelled, for example, HPSI to do was to shall hold public hearings and shall issue a report on its findings. Your resolution, and of course included that's why the open and transparent language was included. This resolution does the opposite. That's all I'm trying to figure out is why not say the Oversight Committee is going to have, quote, open and transparent proceedings. We're going to require them to hold a public hearing, and we're going to require them to issue a report. Why is the language permissive, and why has open and transparent been deleted? And this isn't a political argument. It's a good faith question.
which I answered with a question, why were we in a skiff for weeks?
What I'm saying to you is these
when
resolutions.
the Democrats were investigating?
I hear you. What I'm saying to you is this inquiry resolution and the inquiry resolution that was adopted at the end of October in 2019 are both taking place after 10 months, 11 months of process. You've described what you contend are closed-door hearings that HPSI conducted, interviews, that they conducted. Obviously, you've heard us talk about closed-door interviews that Oversight has conducted. My point is that at the impeachment inquiry phase, when we took that vote, from then on, everything was public, which is why the resolution was structured as such. In this instance, Republicans have removed it, and it's clear that they don't intend to have a public process. That's what I'm asking.
Well, I suspect at some point the other side of the aisle will claim that the information that's being publicly released has no business being in the public about bank records and things like that. So maybe it's an effort to respect the wishes of the other side.
Oh, I'm sure that's the reason, Mr. Massie. But
I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I'm going to yield to the ranking member. I'll just simply say again, this is a good faith argument. It's not complicated. Adding open and transparent to make a commitment to the American people that you're actually going to conduct a process that is open and transparent shouldn't be complicated. It shouldn't be difficult. And I don't know why. I get it. I understand your opposition to some of the other amendments, including amendments that I'm going to offer, but this really shouldn't be one of them. And I'll yield to the ranking member.
No, I think I may have an answer for you. I'm reading USA Today. There's an article, host Republicans, talking about how they omitted open and transparent from the resolution, and the excuse, the rationale that a Republican aide gave was that keeping open and transparent in was wordy. I mean, really? I mean, open and transparent, I mean, 3 words, too wordy? That's the excuse to eliminate it? It's laughable. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, again, I think we all should agree that this should be open and transparent. It was in the previous resolution when we were in charge. Let's just put it in. I mean, that's a sign of good faith. But to say this being omitted because it's wordy, I mean, come on, give me a break. I yield back.
I yield back. All right, yield to the
I don't know whose time it is, but I assume it's the chairman's time, so I appreciate it. Look, again, I've got to just level set here. This amendment literally does nothing other than change the wording of the subheaders. I mean, and the ranking member just admitted that. I mean, we're here talking about changing investigative to open and transparent. Investigative. That's it. Just to put this in perspective, I have the side-by-side comparative, the 116th and the 118th resolution.
Well,
and
why delete it?
Why'd you delete it?
Because we have our hearings have been in the open. They've been open and transparent to begin with.
You deliberately deleted this. Why?
And again, I was with what Mr. Massie was talking about. I was on judiciary. A lot of those meetings were, in fact, most of them were in a skiff. And as Mr. Massey said, had we come out of that skiff and reported what was being said and conducted, we would have been arrested and gone to jail. Our process here has been absolutely open. The public has been included, told, as compared to what Speaker Pelosi did, where again, we were 3 levels below ground in a skiff. So I just don't think this is necessary, but.
Just for the record, gentleman does control the time, so.
Okay, thanks.
Chairman, yield?
I'll yield.
Yeah, I mean, again, these words were deliberately deleted. And my friends keep on saying to us, it's not about Trump, it's not about Trump, it's not about Trump, but now it's about Trump. So you can't have it both ways. But again, deliberately deleted the words open and transparent. And with all due respect, the process that you are conducting right now, I don't believe is open and transparent. And by the way, I mean, I'm not on the Oversight Committee either, but some things, you know, especially on the first impeachment, were classified, and there was a reason for some of that. But again, all we're asking for is the gentleman to put back in the words open and transparent. For some reason, Republicans deliberately removed it. None of us can figure out why, but I support the gentleman's amendment. I yield. Thank you for yielding.
I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion or debate on the amendment? Hearing none. Questions on the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. Noes have it.
As for your recorded vote.
Recorded vote's been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Reschenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Massey. Mr. Massey, no. Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. McGovern. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez. Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
The noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to.